A first in British TV history, the live election debate is here on ITV1 tomorrow evening at 8:30, when the Labour, Conservative and Liberal Democrat party leaders will face questions from a studio audience.
Preparing for the night of their political lives, the three main party leaders get ready for their historic debate. The stage is set for the television event tomorrow that could change this campaign and the fortunes of the men who want to be Prime Minister.
This is the ITV News at 10 with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
I'm in Manchester tonight, the city that will host the first in a series of 3 debates. For Brown, Cameron and Clegg, it's been a day of campaigning, but also rehearsing and role-playing. You decide. Our poll shows a third of voters expect to be influenced by the TV debate. A Fairer Britain, the Liberal Democrats launch their manifesto, but do their sums add up?
Also tonight, the frantic search for survivors in China's earthquake.
Good evening from Manchester. In these TV studios behind me here, in less than 24 hours' time, the three main party leaders will be taking part in a defining election event and a moment of British political history, the first live television debate. The build-up has been going on all day. In the campaign itself today, the Lib Dem leader Nick Clegg has launched his party's manifesto, promising lower taxes and higher pensions. The Prime Minister has admitted he should have done more to police the banks and so prevent the credit crisis. And our ITV News at 10 poll says tomorrow night's debate could be decisive in influencing opinions and therefore the outcome of this election. And it is on that debate that we begin tonight. Our Labour campaign correspondent Lucy Manning now on how Gordon Brown has been gearing up.
Great place to be. Nice to see you. You better win this election, otherwise I'm going out to see you.
He's not going to emerge as the debate winner. His strength is not on scoring points in TV exchanges. That's the view of his campaign team. The Prime Minister took questions and gave answers today, but tomorrow it will be on a whole new scale.
You're looking forward to the TV debate tomorrow, and are you confident you'll win?
I think this was more difficult. I think you've given me a testing time.
Alistair Campbell, jogging in Labour red, of course, is trying to get him into TV shape. Not a Rocky-style regime, we're told, but Mr Brown's former nemesis is playing, well, his current one, David Cameron. On the 5th floor of the hotel at debate camp, they've had several full rehearsals as he gets to grips with the rules.
The debate tomorrow night, are you doing lots of revision?
I'm visiting a health centre. I'm talking to people, listening to people, hearing what people say around the country. You know, the best preparation for a debate is to listen to the people.
But as he's ushered in front of the cameras tomorrow, will he be any match for David Cameron?
There's no doubt David Cameron is a talented television performer. But the job of being Prime Minister involves a lot more than performing on the television. It involves judgment, it involves wisdom in the face of often unanticipated events.
Now let's go out and do it. Thank you very much.
But just before debate day, Mr Brown admitted his mistake on the banks.
All the complaints I were getting from people was, look, you're regulating them too much. And actually, the truth is that globally and nationally, we should have been regulating them more. So I've learned from that.
He just avoided a ticket on his Jag, but will he get away with confessing his mistake while under scrutiny in Manchester?
I'm very proud to meet you.
Well, I'm very proud to meet you.
I've watched you all on television.
Someone thinks he's good on TV, but not all in his team are convinced it will be all right on the night. Lucy Manning, ITV News, Leeds.
So they've been rehearsing for days. Now the big debate is fewer than 24 hours away. For the TV production team and the man in charge, our colleague Alistair Stewart, there are 76 different rules to follow. For the three leaders, there's only one rule, though, that matters. Don't mess up. So here in Manchester, the stage is set. In Manchester tonight, they are making the final preparations for a television programme that is set to make history. A programme on which our three main political leaders will go head-to-head on our screens for the very first time. Reality television doesn't come much more important than this, And the reality is, it could change this election. It is entirely possible that what is said or done on this stage tomorrow night could determine who our future Prime Minister will be. Millions of voters will be watching, and for many, possibly still undecided, it could be one answer, one mistake, or one put down that makes all the difference. Of that, one expert in American presidential debates has no doubt.
This is live television. Live television has a mind of its own, and things will happen that you can't possibly prepare for.
And one gaffe could change the nature of the campaign.
Possibly, because if the gaffe is what emerges as the storyline after the debate, then all we're going to be talking about is the gaffe.
Party heavyweights are already putting the case for their man.
It's a good thing for democracy. I think a lot of people will pay a lot of attention. And I think our own candidate, Nick Clegg, who is an extremely attractive politician, as the public will find out, stands a very good chance of making real progress.
The problem is that people judge the winner not so much on their performance, but on the difference between expectation and performance. And expectations of David Cameron are very high. Expectations of Gordon Brown are far too low. So that's something we need to watch out for.
Gordon Brown will get a chance to come through as a very good communicator who's in complete control and in total mastery of the detail that people need to know.
Moderator Alistair Stewart is quite clear about the significance.
I think it's absolutely huge because apart from it being the first time that the three of them have done it, it's the first time it's ever been done. And because the polls are so close, it really could determine the outcome of the election as millions of people watch it, listen to the answers, the body language, everything. It's going to make people decide how they're going to vote. It is that significant.
The countdown is on to a prime-time political drama. Well, our campaign correspondents have been crisscrossing the country with the party leaders today. Let's join them in turn. Labour first and Lucy Manning again. And Lucy, how do Labour fancy Gordon Brown's chances tomorrow evening?
Well, there is no doubt that the Labour team are managing down expectations. They've been studying debates from across the world, Australia and America. They have an American here at debate camp, and they think that it's normally the challenger, in this case David Cameron, who does well. They think that Nick Clegg will actually emerge the winner just from the high profile it gives him. Now, Mr. Brown's a football fan, and they've been talking in football terms. They say it doesn't matter what happens before with the preparations or the talk after. What matters is the 90 minutes of action. And certainly on substance, they think their man will do well. But they point to the PR skills of Mr. Cameron, but they hope that the people don't just make their choice on this first debate. They want the voters to look at the record and resilience of Mr. Brown, and they think on that he will do well. On jokes, don't expect many. On clothing and appearance, well, that is Sarah's choice, but there is no doubt Mr. Brown knows he will be making history tomorrow.
Well, this debate is perhaps David Cameron's to lose, and he told me today he was nervous. I watched him on a plane today with a very large folder full of briefing documents. The problem is that the polls suggest most people believe he should win this debate, and that is a huge weight of expectation on him. So he's been rehearsing, doing mock debates, and the Tories have been playing up Gordon Brown today, calling him formidable and saying it's rubbish that he wouldn't perform well. Now, interestingly, the Tories have hired a team of American experts to coach Mr. Cameron. One of them, Anita Dunn, worked with Barack Obama on body language and on tone, teaching him, for example, how to come across as smart but not smug, as likeable but not smooth, and how to appeal to women voters. Those experts will be with him again tomorrow, and the Tories know it's not just what you say, it's not the statistics, it's how you come across, its emotion, personality, how you say things, and they know that it is perhaps David Cameron's to lose.
Well, we're deep in the Cheshire countryside. Nick Clegg is tucked away in a secluded country hotel just across the fields behind me. Campaigning has almost stopped. He's with his advisors doing last-minute preparation. I was out with him today campaigning in Oldham in a supermarket, and a man asked him, "Are you nervous about the big night tomorrow?" And he said, well, it's going to be like the biggest job interview of my life. He's been rehearsing hard using a stage and podiums, and two of his senior colleagues have been playing the parts of Gordon Brown and David Cameron. Tomorrow he's going to a school where he's going to take questions from the pupils, a photo opportunity, but also final preparation.
All right, Angus, thank you very much indeed for that. And tonight's ITV News at 10 opinion poll, in partnership with the Independent newspaper, reveals just how important the debate will be in making up voters' minds. Our senior correspondent, James Mates, back in the studio, has the details.
Yes, some really interesting figures on how important these debates are going to be. But first, let's see who's up and who's down. Polling has been over the last 2 days, so all our sample have had a chance to see the Labour manifesto, half of them the Tory manifesto, but none have seen today's launch by the Lib Dems. Now, bearing that in mind, the Tories won't be thrilled at going down 1 point on yesterday to 35%, with Labour even less happy at falling 2 points to 29, while the Lib Dems, well, they've gone up 2 to 21%. So the Tory lead is up slightly to 6%, but none of this is a great advert for the persuasive powers of manifestos. Translated into seats in the Commons, well, that will put the Tories back in front, but there's only 16 in it, and we are still firmly in hung Parliament territory. Now, our second question tonight is, of course, about the leadership debates that kick off tomorrow night. Now, here you split into 3 groups. 31% of you say, well, you just won't watch any of them. 32% say you will watch, but they won't influence your vote. 33%, now that is 1 in 3 of you, say you are going to watch and it may influence your vote. Now, given how few people ever change their vote, that is a really significant number.
They are likely to be the single most decisive event of the entire campaign. And what we would expect to see is some shift in the polls, probably after the first debate, because it's quite possible that by the time the second and third debates happen, that some kind of voter fatigue has set in. So the first one is really vital.
Now, here's something that will not surprise half of you watching tonight. Women are much more likely to listen and change their minds than men. 36% of women versus just 28% of men may be influenced by what the 3 leaders have to say. Perhaps we better say no more about that. But interestingly too, the more certain you are that you will vote, the more open-minded you say you are about the parties. Fully 40% of those very likely to vote say that the debate could influence the way they vote. So there is here a huge opportunity for any one of the 3 leaders tomorrow night to blow this election wide open. And we'll be telling you here first if they've managed it. As soon as they finish speaking, we launch our instant poll of 1,000 people. Within minutes on News at 10, we'll be able to tell you who's won and whether it's likely to affect the result.
James Mates there, and with a hung Parliament a real possibility, as James was saying, all eyes were on the Liberal Democrats today as their leader Nick Clegg issued their manifesto. There'll be tax cuts for low earners and even well-paid workers, with the tax threshold raised to £10,000, but they'd put up capital gains tax and only give basic rate tax relief on pension contributions. They'll protect the state pension by linking it to earnings or inflation, whichever is higher. They've identified £15 billion in savings, and a £2.5 billion pupil premium will direct money towards schools for children from poorer families. Our political editor Tom Bradby now on the policies the Lib Dems hope will give them a role in government.
His party worries that he doesn't get enough publicity, his opponents that he doesn't get nearly enough scrutiny. Well, he got both today. Nick Clegg and his colleagues have been withering in their criticism. George Osborne is guilty of schoolboy economics. Gordon Brown is like Ashley Cole. And yes, Mr. Clegg said today, we are different.
The 2 old parties, they're conspiring to airbrush the recession out of this election. Labour, so we don't blame them for the damage they've done. The Conservatives, so they don't have to come clean about the cuts and the tax rises they're planning. They are treating people like fools.
But if you're going to dish it out like that, you'd better get your own sums right. And some of Mr. Clegg's looked shaky today, particularly those on his big proposal. A massive £17 billion tax cut, which would see everyone cleared of any tax at all on the first £10,000 of income. To pay for this, he believes he can rake in more than £4.5 billion by cracking down on tax avoidance, plus $3 billion on a new plane duty and $5.5 billion from ending tax relief on pensions for higher rate taxpayers. The crackdown on tax avoidance in particular is supposed to raise a huge sum.
You've been very rude about your political opponents. The Treasury has year after year said it's going to crack down on this kind of tax avoidance. You know as well as I do it's a constantly moving target. Are you really going to say that you can achieve this? A lot of people are going to say it's just fantasy economics.
I just refuse to accept that a 10% reduction in this huge industry of tax avoidance and evasion is somehow an unrealisable target. As I say, there are some flagrant abuses of the tax system, which may be presently legal. The evasion of stamp duty by very large companies is just one notorious example. But it can be changed if there's the political will there.
The other two main parties always complain bitterly that the Liberal Democrats are able to get away with a great deal because they're simply not subject to the same level of scrutiny. Well, this plan certainly is radical, but it is also true to say that it raises a great many questions.
Nick Clegg has always been held by the high esteem in which his number two, Vince Cable, is held at Westminster. His standing did take a bit of a knock today, but the manifesto certainly does promise change. Tom Bradby.
So, Tom, let's talk about all this. The Liberal Democrats first. Has Vince Cable's halo slipped slightly today?
Well, a bit, I think, because really the point is that he and Nick Clegg have been extremely disdainful of the other two main parties, using phrases like, you know, schoolboy economics, back-of-the-envelope calculations. Therefore, it was critical they got their sums right, and people like the IFS have begun to punch some holes in. And that doesn't make them worse, of course, than the Tories and Labour, because the IFS have been extremely sceptical of some of what all the main parties have said. But the Lib Dems did sort of say, look, we're better on this, and I'm not sure that's quite the conclusion at the end. Some positives, though. I mean, you know, they did have this is the back of their manifesto. It's like a budget. They've set out all the figures. The Tories didn't do that. It's very rare for an opposition party. So that's a positive. And I think there's another point worth mentioning tonight. The Telegraph have got a big poll out tomorrow on their front page that's a marginal poll, a very detailed one, and it actually takes into account unusually the MPs, so they're claiming that it's particularly accurate. What it shows is the Tories doing very well under Labour, 12 points ahead, perhaps enough to form a decent majority. But interestingly, it shows them making absolutely no headway at all against the Lib Dems. So in that sense, I think it looks like the Lib Dems could be having quite a good campaign.
And very briefly, Tom, tomorrow's debate, who has the most to win?
Well, they've all got so much at stake. You know, it's easy for us TV guys to hype it, but I have to say, being here, there is a sort of sense of, you know, nerves, because it's a huge day for all of them. It's difficult to say that one's got more at stake than the other. They've all got a huge amount to gain and a huge amount to lose.
All right, Tom, thank you very much indeed.
Well, let's move on to the rest of the day's news now. Entire towns have been reduced to rubble in southwestern China by a powerful earthquake. So far, 400 people are believed dead. 10,000 others have been injured, with thousands more left homeless. Legions of Chinese soldiers are now rushing to the worst affected areas to try to save those trapped under the ruins. Paul Davis reports.
This time yesterday, there were densely populated streets, shops and schools here. The powerful earthquake struck just before 8 in the morning. By the time the earth stopped shaking, 80% of the buildings in this mountain town had been toppled. Those residents who dared to remain in the devastation, desperately searching for family and friends who'd been buried alive. For a stark illustration of the destruction, compare these pictures of Yushu County's regional capital taken before the earthquake. 80,000 people lived in this mountain town, familiar to trekkers. Their world was shattered in a few minutes. At least 400 of those people are believed to have died in the earthquake, and thousands more have been injured. The area affected is West China's Qinghai province in the mountains bordering Tibet, the epicenter of the 6.9 magnitude earthquake, the remote Yushu County. Because of the proximity to Tibet, this is a militarized area, and hundreds of Chinese troops are now being deployed to help in the rescue effort. This seismologist says 5 aftershocks have been recorded and more are expected to make the emergency operation more difficult. These images of the desperate struggle to clear rubble and reach survivors are only too reminiscent of 2008, when a huge earthquake in neighbouring Sichuan province claimed 87,000 lives. Tonight, soldiers and monks are working together in the aftermath of another natural disaster. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Now, it is a scientific breakthrough that could prevent thousands of children from inheriting genetic disorders. Scientists at Newcastle University have, for the first time, transferred DNA from one human egg to another. The microscopic IVF technique could help those whose defective DNA can cause physical and learning difficulties and even early death. Well, let's move on to tonight's football now. And Arsenal missed their chance to move up to second.
And finally, some lessons from America for the party leaders as they prepare for tomorrow's big debate here in Manchester. Across the Atlantic, TV debates have, of course, long been part of political life. So, from our Washington correspondent John Irvine tonight, what not to do in front of the TV cameras.
The candidates need no introduction. The Republican candidate,
Richard Nixon, became the first victim of the minefield that is TV debates, even before the cameras rolled. Jack Kennedy refused the offer of makeup, compelling his opponent to do the same. Nixon came across as sweaty and shifty. It was a win for Kennedy.
This is the ultimate show in a democratic nation.
Nobody knows more about presidential debates than Jim Lehrer. He's chaired no fewer than 11 of them, including the last one between Barack Obama and John McCain.
One of these people is going to end up running the country.
Did it feel gladiatorial?
Yeah, sure. Because it is. It really is. I mean, it is, you know, shield. And I mean, and it's right there for everybody to see. That's what's so terrific about it. Why, in terms of the democratic process of giving people an opportunity to make a decision, this is, you do see the gladiators.
Television has been cruel to Howard Dean. This performance, nicknamed Meltdown in the Midwest, finished his chances of being the Democratic candidate in 2004. Nonetheless, he supports televised debates.
There are many things that I would not copy if I were a Brit about American politics, but the debates are an area where I would, because you get to see the person who's going to be the leader of your country up front in a pressured situation, and I think that's worth something.
There have been memorable unforced errors, like George Bush's apparent desire to be somewhere else.
Was I glad when the damn thing was over? Yeah. And maybe that's why I was looking at it. Yeah. Only 10 more minutes of this crap. I mean.
And this ridiculous assertion by Gerald Ford.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
You need some one-liners. You hate to think that the world is that artificial and that entertainment matters, but frankly it does.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did.
Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
I walked off and I was almost certain the campaign was over, and it was.
We've shown you the highlights, but in truth, most of these debates have ended in a dull, scoreless draw because not losing takes priority over trying to win. Perhaps the cut and thrust of question time in the House of Commons will help make the British party leaders feel less inhibited. John Irvine, ITV News, Washington.
And by this time tomorrow, we'll know how they've done. Tomorrow they meet, the three party leaders head to head in the first ever televised leaders debate. In another first that night, News at 10 will have an instant poll of 1,000 voters. The question, who won? And in Britain's Most Wanted, key voters in the key marginal of Bolton give their live reaction using our opinion tracker. Their vote could decide the outcome of this election. So, News at 10, the verdict, immediately after the debate on ITV1 tomorrow. So don't miss it. Join us then, but that is tonight's ITV News at 10. Coming next, the national weather and the news from your part of the UK. So from Mary in the studio and from me and the entire team in Manchester, good night and thank you for watching.
Oh, look, it's driving rain.
Brilliant.
It's driving the car.
ITV1 National Weather, sponsored by Confused.com.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Clear skies developing towards the southern parts of the UK, going to translate to plenty of early morning brightness as we start Thursday. Towards the north as well, you should see some brightness too, which will be a relief after all the cloudy conditions that you've seen recently. So as we move ahead to the afternoon, you can see across the northern parts we've got a mixture of bright spells, but also a fair amount of cloud around. Even so, temperatures here not too bad, around 12 or 13 Celsius. Now, as we look further south, our chance of sunshine increases still further, particularly across much of Wales, the West Country, and really anywhere south of the M4 corridor and across the Channel Islands too. It's looking absolutely lovely. Rather more cloud across the central areas, but at least towards the eastern fringes, it's not going to be quite as cold as it was today. Very good night.
ITV1 National Weather, sponsored by Confused.com.
Hello, you're watching Central Tonight in the East Midlands. Team GB will be based at Loughborough University after a U-turn by the British Olympic Association. Bosses had originally chosen the Aldershot Army Barracks for their training site, but after the appointment of a chief executive, the Leicestershire location has been named as the home to the 2012 team. Many of the country's Olympic contenders already use the state-of-the-art facilities, as Jane Hesketh reports.
Well, the British Olympic Association don't decide on themselves exactly where they're going to place the headquarters of Team GB. They have to consult with the various sporting bodies, and the majority of those said Loughborough was the place they'd like to bring their athletes to, and that's gone down extremely well here today.
I think it's fantastic news. I mean, we've got a world-class athletics facility here and other world-class facilities for other sports, which are all based around campus.
It's great for Loughborough to attract other athletes over here, and hopefully it will mean that people might want to come here even before that to get to know the facilities.
Well, there's no doubt this is a huge feather in the cap for the university, but will they be able to cope with 500 plus athletes turning up on their doorstep in 2012? Well, joining me is Chris Earle. He's a director of sport. How are you going to cope with all this?
We're really happy we'll be able to cope with it. We already have a high number of elite athletes who use our facilities here already. When it comes to 2012, we know the facilities will be here, the services will be here to make sure that they have the best possible preparation for their competition in 2012 down in London.
So is there much excitement on the campus at the moment?
Huge. Today's created a whole buzz about the place that wouldn't normally be here. It's great. We're really happy.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much. Well, of course, this is good news for the university, but it's also good news for Loughborough and good news for the economy, because all those trainers will be coming with the athletes, all the coaches will be coming, and there'll be a large contingent of the media as well, following them every step of the way. Jane Hesketh in Loughborough for Central Tonight.
The children born with birth defects after their mothers were exposed to poisonous chemicals in Northamptonshire could find out later this week how much compensation they'll receive. Last year, a High Court judge said Corby Borough Council was negligent in its clean-up of a steelworks, and that may have led to birth defects in children. The council is appealing against the ruling, but in the meantime, it's begun mediation with the families in the hope of reaching an out-of-court settlement. The Pleasure Island theme park in Lincolnshire has closed with no explanation from the park's owners. Staff showed up for work today at the site near Ingomells, but were given letters terminating their employment. Visitors were also left disappointed after being turned away at the gate.
Gutted like a fish.
Can you believe what's happened, that it's closed?
No, they ought to put signs up. It's it's not on, is it? It's not on.
A bit disappointed, really. It's a bit of a trek to come out here and then find out it's closed.
The Liberal Democrats have launched their party's manifesto promising to make Britain a fairer country. Among the plans is a tax cut for low and middle income earners. Leader Nick Clegg says he's hoping his party's message will strike a chord with voters across the Midlands. In the last election, the Lib Dems only managed to win 4 of the 106 seats here.
We will close loopholes that unfairly benefit those at the top, clamp down on tax avoidance, introduce a new mansion tax, and increase aviation duties. It's because we're being straightforward about those tax rises that you can put trust in our tax cuts.
Labour's Jack Straw was also getting his message across to voters in Leicester. He stood on a soapbox and grabbed a microphone to address the city centre crowd, which, unlike some recent Labour election events, wasn't limited to the party faithful. Mr Straw took questions on a variety of topics, including his own area of expertise, law and order. A village is celebrating after being told it has the fastest broadband connection in a rural area anywhere in the country. Residents from the picturesque area of Liddington in Rutland were told by BT that superfast broadband in their area wasn't cost effective. So they decided to install it themselves, courtesy of a local company and £37,000. 40 other communities are now planning to follow their success story.
It's the fastest broadband installation in a rural village in the UK, so it is a first, and it was also significant that we took the whole of the copper line, disconnected the customers completely from the BT network, so that set a precedent in the UK.
It's a bit like getting out of your clunky old Morris Marina and getting into your shiny new Jaguar. So that's the kind of difference it makes.
Well, sport now, and in football, Notts County are more or less celebrating promotion to League One in a season littered with twists and turns. The Magpies claimed a 5th successive win, this time against Lincoln City, to claim top spot in League Two. Technically, they need 1 more point to confirm promotion, but they're 12 points clear of 4th place Rotherham, with 6 games left and a much greater goal difference. The team have played on through a takeover by a Middle East consortium, the arrival and departure of ex-England manager Sven-Goran Eriksson and defender Sol Campbell, as well as a new manager.
I think a lot of the fans wouldn't have missed it. You wouldn't get a ride like that at Alton Towers. It's been absolutely brilliant, yes.
So plenty of celebrations now underway.
Yes, the bubbly will be out shortly, yes.
And a quick thought about League One then. How do you fancy your chances?
If we can keep the players that we have, or the majority of the players we have, I quite fancy us for a mid to top table finish.
Right, let's get the weather now. Here's Lucy.
I've got my flight sorted, baby. I grabbed a car and room too. Now I just need to decide. Do I take pink or blue?
Hello, well if you're fed up of it feeling so chilly, here's something to cheer you up. We are expecting this weekend to be much improved, dry, warm and sunny on Saturday. For tonight though, we've got more clouds moving in from the northeast, temperatures reaching lows of 4 degrees Celsius, so we should escape a frost. And then a cloudy start to the day tomorrow, but the sunshine will gradually peep through in the afternoon, but it's still going to feel chilly in that wind, especially on the east coast where temperatures are just reaching double figures. Elsewhere, highs of 12 degrees Celsius. I'll see you later on. Bye for now.
ITV Regional Weather with BeMyBaby.com.
And that's it from the late team. Good night.